So our order of business today is the first thing we're going to do is get a 90-day update from our very first rapid process improvement workshop on our access to care value stream. Then we'll go into our final report out for our very first RPIW for our second value stream, which is equipment availability. Rosalie, hold on.
I'm Rose Sparrow. I am process owner for the first RPIW for access to care for scheduling appointments via the telephone. I'm also practice manager for primary care offices, 2 of them in the O'Day building. And the RPIW is to create, the RPIW that I was process owner for was to create a seamless phone process that provides an effective and efficient interaction that exceeds our patients' expectations by using standard work, mistake proofing, and setup reduction. Some areas that were measured: lead time for scheduling appointments. We started with a baseline of 3.7 minutes, and our target was 2.8 minutes. At the end of RPIW week, we were at 2.7 minutes, and at 90 days, we are at 3.5 minutes. That gives us a 5.9% improvement. Some quality defects. We started at a baseline. Quality defects. For phone calls that came in and were put on hold, our goal was 0% for quality defects for that, and any calls that were dropped from patients holding too long. Baseline was at 67%, and hang-ups for patients holding too long were at 18%. And again, our target was at 0%. End of RPIW week, we were at 33% for holds and 3% for hang-ups, and then at 90 days, we're at 56% for holds, and we have improved and at 0% for calls being on hold too long and using those calls. Another measurement was productivity gain. Our baseline, 80 minutes. Productivity gain. Outgoing calls that staff was making, redundant reminder calls. We have eliminated reminder calls because we're using Tavoca, 100% relying on Tavoca to reach out to our patients, and that has worked. We did some changes to our Tavoca, and that has worked very well. Our target for productivity gain was outgoing calls of staff 40 minutes, which would be 0.83 FTE. At the end of RPIW week, we were at 55 minutes with an FTE of 0.115. At 90 days, we're at 23 minutes with an FTE of 0.11. No, I'm sorry. 0.047. And that is a 71.6% improvement. Sorry about that. Some sustained process improvements. There were some identified wastes. Now we have initiated the use of Vocera, which has improved the seconds by pre-RPIW. It was 41 seconds of walk time to reach an MA to let them know the patient had arrived. Now it's less than 10 seconds to contact MA or provider, asking them questions where front desk staff is not getting up away from the phones. We moved the printer where there was a wasteful motion of 51 minutes walk time in a day. Now we are at instant document removal because the printer has been moved right at the checkout station. Some improved patient values. Our caller greeting was changed so patients are able to reach someone to answer the phone quicker. It's an ease and better navigation of them choosing an option to get to the right person. The script for staff answering phones has been improved and identified at each workstation, so anybody coming in to help out, they are able to just answer the phone and read the greeting and be able to get connection with the patient to what their need is for calling. And then we talked about the Tavoca edits. Daily acute visits have been added to the schedule. Doctors are giving the staff that information so they don't have to get up away from the desk and go reach out and find out, hey, is it okay to get these patients in at this time? Lastly, some barriers. We've had some staff turnover at the GIMBA, which will impact maintaining quality defect goals reaching 0%. However, some key learnings, the improvement of communication among the staff have improved tremendously. Awareness and just overall improvement of that connection between letting the front staff communicate with the back staff has improved a lot. And we are continued to looking and improving our processes ongoing.
Thank you, Rosalie. Next steps to that access of care improvements, we're looking to bundle them up, package them, and take them to all the other practices. The next RPIW for access to care will be in August, and it will focus on the MA rooming process.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming to the second Rapid Process Improvement Workshop for equipment availability. Now, in reality, what that meant was, that's kind of a broad term. What we actually narrowed this session down to, this workshop down to, was clinical engineering, clinical equipment, and the period from the time equipment was identified until it was actually picked up by whomever. And so I wanted to first thank the entire team for all of your efforts. You all worked very hard. I think I said earlier in the week, you could tell how busy the group was by how messy the environment was, because they just had things everywhere. But it was all good stuff. But I also want to specifically congratulate and thank Karen, Michelle, Ellen, for your leadership, your mentorship, and without your work this week, or for before this week wouldn't have happened. And it's having the leadership team be at this level and quality is critical, and then having a good selection of team that actually does the work. I think we picked a good group who actually kind of experienced and got energized from it. So, I'll start with that. So, Dave, you ever think I would be up here? Dave and I, over years, we've had several heated discussions around my philosophy on the lean management and Dave's philosophy, and we butted heads a lot. So I didn't know you were going to be here, but I thought I'd take this opportunity. It's a good segue, by the way. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to say is I guess I can be considered a convert. So about a year and a half ago, went to Virginia Mason, and now have seen a lot of the good work that the teams are doing. You know, I guess you can now count me. I hate to admit it to you, but so this week, this team was challenged. They were challenged to find waste. They were challenged to think out of the box. And they were, in many cases, they were challenged to go into a work environment that was out of their comfort zone. They were also taught and I think did a great job to be hyper vigilant in looking at the minute tasks that the staff on the 5th floor just take for granted every day. And that's not an easy thing to do, to step back and actually look at every step and every piece of paper they pick up and how many, footsteps it takes to go from here to there. It's just that the staff on the 5th floor just take for granted. But so these guys were challenged to do that. I think once you see the fruits of their labor, I hope that you'll see that that challenge was accepted and the challenge was accomplished. But I want to also say that this task is not over. They have identified a lot of opportunities, but this just begins. This is scraping the surface of all of the opportunities that are available, but I think it begins the momentum. I've said in a number of venues, this started with clinical engineering, but a lot of times during this week I would come up with, if you fix that, it helps IT or it helps facilities. And so we got a lot more wins out of this than just this workshop. And so I think enough of me. I'd like more to actually have the team show the results and the good work that they've done. So thank you, everybody, for coming.
I'd like to acknowledge the great work that Tom has done all throughout as our executive sponsor, so I appreciate all your support. It was my honor and my privilege to work with this team of people that came together from everywhere in the hospital: clinical engineering, quality, nursing floors, environmental services. We had representation from a lot of different areas, and they were virtual strangers at the beginning of the week. They came together and did some really great work out of their comfort zone, as you said. When we're working with broken equipment and we spend a lot of time looking at numbers and analyzing data and doing lead times and number of defects, this team never lost sight of our patient. Our patient went with us everywhere, and they would always stop and ask. Yeah, his name is Charles Diff. He was with us everywhere we went, and they always asked the question, what's best for the patient? Even if we were talking about a piece of broken equipment, well, what's best for the patient? And they did a really fabulous job with that. Somewhere around Tuesday afternoon, or the days kind of run together, somewhere in the middle of the week, I stopped the tech and I asked her a question about how she felt when she went into a room with a piece of equipment that was broken. And I expected her to say, I was frustrated, I was annoyed, I was kind of ticked off. But what she said was, I was embarrassed. And what that said to me was that she was thinking about that patient. She wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about that experience for that patient. And that was pretty moving, actually, for me. It kept us focused on what was really important. So I'll keep C. or Charles, Chuck D, as we like to call him. So I also had the privilege of working as the workshop lead for this RPIW. And the team will be reporting out to a cycle time of 15 minutes.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
This is our project form, which kind of speaks to our visual storyboard. And it tells us what our current situation is, it tells us what our team members are, and it also tells us what the focus is. The aim for this RPIW is to create a standard process by which staff are able to seamlessly identify a piece of broken equipment, get a replacement if needed, and have clinical equipment retrieved in a timely manner, and also improve intra- and interdepartmental communication. I'd like to point out our advisory list here. Our advisory group this week has been phenomenal. We got on the phone with transportation, and they came right up to see what they could do to help us. We got on the phone with EDS. Our safety officer was walking the halls with us to try and find good areas that were safe for equipment. Our IT, our Mike Poole from TMS. We had just an amazing support, so I'd like to thank our advisory group for that.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Michelle McKee. I am a Transformation Fellow here, and I had the honor of being in the role this week as the team lead. So I want to walk you through a couple documents to get you a little bit oriented to our project. This is our target progress report, and the sponsor team meets for weeks leading up to the Rapid Process Improvement Workshop, and we look at measures of success. So at the end of this week, at the end of 30, 60, 90 days, how will we show our success? Some of those metrics that we chose, the first one we chose was staff walking. Our baseline for that metric was 262 steps. We would like to reach a 25% reduction. The lead time, when Tom spoke about, from the time that piece of equipment is identified as broken until the time it is picked up for service. Currently, our baseline was 56 hours and 57 minutes. We'd like to cut that in half. Work in process. So that's a snapshot of time. If we went into the ticketing system right now, how many work orders do we have requests to fix? 246. Our standard work in process, if we are fortunate enough to decrease that lead time, the amount of time we have available to do those tickets, and wouldn't it feel better to have 85 pieces of broken equipment in process than 173? We had to choose a couple quality defects, of course. We always want the target to be 0 for quality defects. The first one, when we were looking over the reports that would come out of the ticketing system, discovered that the two biggest pieces of equipment for request for service are IV pumps and Dynamaps, or vital signs machines. And of those two pieces of equipment, 38 or 35.8% of those, so like 36%, having to do with some sort of battery issue. So the battery was dead, it would not hold a charge, it needed changing. We want that to be 0. Erica did a really nice job on the 5th floor when she was preparing her staff. She sent out a pre-survey. And one of those questions was the percent of time nursing staff do not strongly agree that a request for equipment repair and labeling is user-friendly. That's at 74%. They don't like that process. So we want that to be 0. We want them to feel good that it is easy and user-friendly. We're looking for a productivity gain. So those steps we talked about earlier, could we make that equivalent to an FTE? So right now at baseline, 0.138 of an FTE is spent walking and rounding and collecting that equipment. Can we cut that in half? And then a 5S level, a workplace organization and safety measure. We are currently at a level 1, and we'd like to reach a level 4. So we'll come back to this report later. So in order to figure out how we're doing, we had to calculate our TAC time. So our TAC time in this process is the total amount of hours available by the clinical engineering department, 176 hours. When we divide that by the amount of work orders that they have in a month, and this baseline was for January, they had 533, that means every 19.81 minutes, or almost every 20 minutes, a piece of equipment needs to be repaired and back in service. That's a lot. So through many hours of observations, our team put together this value stream. It's very busy. You don't need to know a whole bunch of levels of detail about it right now. But what I will show you is the first line, the purple cycle boxes. We looked at the experience of the piece of broken equipment. Then we run a parallel process to it, looking at staff experience in dealing with that piece of broken equipment. All of the bursts around the outside represent waste or areas of opportunity that we were looking to improve this week. This is our current state. This was an exercise the team went through on Monday. The various operators that are involved in the process are the yellow stickies. The purple stickies at the top represent those cycle boxes from the previous value stream. And the yellow and red yarn around the outside represents, yellow means slow and red means broken. We decided to circle the whole thing because it was such a hot mess. You can see all the various forms of communication. It could be verbal, it could be electronic, it could be a phone call. And the pink stickies represent waste that the team identified on Monday.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeanette Wiesner. I'm a unit clerk in CNA on 2 Central. And our team found that there was a lot of equipment plugged in various parts of the 5th floor, such as hallways and nurses' station. We also, while doing that, observing, we found that the root cause of the equipment was dead batteries, with both the Dynamax and IV pumps, functional and non-functional, also in nurses' stations. So as a result, this increased the number of work orders being generated to clinical engineering. For instance, out of 81 calls, 29 were related to dead batteries or a lack of charging of the batteries. This also increased the amount of nursing hours just searching for a working piece of equipment. For example, it took 87 hours, nursing hours, looking for a piece of equipment. That's a year. Can you imagine what it does to patient care? So that's 87 hours that we're not providing care. So we also, the solution, what we decided to do is do the 5S step process. This created one designated area on both sides for charging equipment, mainly the Dynamaps. We also educated the staff that there's only one new location now, not in the hallways, not in the nurses' station, not in the storage areas. In addition to this, we added a checklist to the PCC. One more item to the checklist, and the PCC will then designate a CNA to do a sweep through both areas, 5 East, 5 West. Someone will be assigned day and night shift. And this will make sure that there isn't any hallways filled with electrical equipment. This also complies with the Joint Commission Committee standards. If we just keep everything plugged in at a designated spot, the one designated location, again, this complies with Joint Commission. The outcome to this process will reduce the number of related clinical engineering tickets due to battery-related issues. Reduces the amount of nursing hours looking again for equipment, functional equipment. And this will prevent the Dynamat from being charged in the hallways again. And again, it complies with the Joint Commission and patient safety. Because the more we have to look for a working piece of equipment, that takes time away from the patient and their care. The last and most important, we did a survey and got the RNs, CNAs, and secretaries, what could we do to make your day or night better? And when we told them we had a designated place for charging, and they were like, wow, thanks. That would really help. So thank you, and that's it.
Code Blue, dialysis 7 West. Code
Good
Blue,
afternoon.
dialysis
I'm Shalisa. I'm one of the lead techs in environmental services. The problem that we as a team found was there was no standard work cleaning for IV pumps before sending it to clinical engineering for fixing. No standard steps of what EVS is to do when they found broken IV pumps in the soil utility rooms. We worked with the team to create standard work for cleaning the IV pumps. The 4 steps are, when you identify a broken equipment, the first step is identifying the broken equipment. The second step is to clean it. Third step, remove it from the soil utility room. The 4th step is to take it to your designated staff that's on that floor and have it put in for service requests. As a result, we ensure all the broken IV pumps that go to the clinical engineer are cleaned and EVS knows what to do when they found a broken equipment pump in the soil utility room. We took many surveys from RN CNAs for the new standard work and had gotten a lot of positive feedback.
Good afternoon, I'm Nancy Miller, Senior Administrative Assistant in Clinical Engineering. The rpiw on this idea form shows lots of variation on how the ticketing process was used. Not every piece of equipment received a service request, which caused defects and delays that were very wasteful. Our first step was to make a change in the service tracking, which is visible on the internet page. With the assistance of IT, we changed the service tracking and we highlighted it in red so it's easily accessible for the users. Then our team applied the 5S process to the service request by adding the manager's names, which populates other fields automatically, which eliminated our steps from 7 steps to 3 steps. Let's see here. The team then created a standard workflow for the staff on how to enter a ticket on the broken equipment. I physically sat down with some staff and showed them how to enter the tickets. The final conclusion, the time of observation shows that the new process from cleaning to the delivery of the equipment is only about 158 seconds.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Shade, Data Analyst in the Quality Management Department. The team identified several issues with both the identification and storage of broken equipment. What you're looking at here are several examples of the way broken equipment was being identified on the floor. One of those ways is the bright orange sticky, which we know leaves a lot of sticky tape residue behind. Another way is the use of any Post-it that happened to be handy. My personal all-time favorite is a paper towel with a note hastily scribbled on it. We also noted that there was no place common to the floor to store broken equipment once it was identified. The broken equipment could be found in the hallway, at the nurse's station, on a desk, in a storage utility room, etc. That meant that when clinical engineering came to round on the floor to find this equipment, they had to go all over the floor and look in all the nooks and crannies to find it. So the team came up with an idea that maybe we needed one designated area on the floor to store that equipment. So with the help of the 5th floor staff, we found an almost ideal location that was very close to the staff elevators, and it was also central to both the east and the west sides. It was mainly being used for storage of recliners, and the unit manager requested that we reserve some spot in that area to keep at least 2 recliners. So what the team did was we lined off 2 areas, one for broken equipment and one for the 2 recliners, and we put up some minimal signage to ask the team to keep the 2 areas separate and to put the broken equipment there when they identified it. We also asked the team to, when they identified a piece of equipment as broken, that they go to service tracking and enter the service request and print out a copy of that service request. The broken equipment was then to be taken to the storage area, and that printed copy be attached with a piece of Scotch tape to the piece of broken equipment. Now I want to note that we did our very first audit of that area the very next day. Note that we did not do any formal training. There were no blast emails to say this is our new process. What we did was, once we put up some minimal signs, very makeshift signs by the way, and put some tape on the floor, we brought a few of the staff over and we said, what do you think about this? Can this work? And they looked at it and they said, yeah, we think this will work. So I was very surprised. The next day I went over to do an audit, and there were 4 pieces of broken equipment in that area already. So, and there was no formal training done. So it was basically just word of mouth that, or maybe they walked by and said, oh, this is where we're supposed to put our broken equipment. On our first audit, we had 4 pieces of equipment that were there, and 4 of them were properly identified with the work order attached. There was 1 recliner, and it was in the proper area. So I think what this says is basically, if you implement a simple process, people will follow it inherently. What you're looking at here is our 5S level of achievement grid. Obviously, we started off at a level 1, just beginning, and the team sat down and reviewed all of the processes that you're hearing about, hear us talk about today, and we decided that we have moved this up to level 3 to make it visual stage.
Hi, I'm Janet Stefanelli from the 6th floor, who mainly works weekends, in fact, every weekend. So one of the challenges that the team found was we have pieces of equipment that have easy fixes. And by easy fixes, I mean consumables. If you don't know what a consumable is, there's some of them. Temperature probe, maybe a pulse ox probe, tubing that's very easy to change on a Dynamap. So the team came up with a problem of, let's solve this and put some consumables on the unit. So with that, we wanted to make staff accountable for taking this equipment that can be relatively expensive, or at least have a cost to it. So we placed a key from a room that was not being served on the 5th floor, with the staff help of knowing that there was another empty PCC office, and made a key, put that in the med pixes, so there's accountability of who pulls the key to go into that room. And then once they get in the room, we established a 2-bin Kanban system, which is similar to that that's used with the supply pixes right now. We put a standard work flow right there of how and what you need to do. We also created a par levels with the help of the staff and Erica, also adding the hem number if it needed to be ordered so that somebody could do it quickly. And with that, I tried it out with a couple of the staff members who run charge, who are not PCCs on the unit, and found that we replaced the pulse ox probe. So beginning to end of the process, it took only 2 minutes and 53 seconds to fix a piece of equipment that could have ultimately been broken on Friday evening and not picked up from clinical engineering till Monday morning. So that piece of equipment was placed back into service. So we have no delay of care. I walked the process with them. That's how we got our time and seconds from the broken to the where the storage was back to replacing the key. We also developed a standard work checklist, which shows that the charge nurse will be checking that. So if a bin is empty, she can elevate that to whomever needs to order to fill that bin's par level. The one cool thing that happened, so I was wondering how it was going to be measured. Yesterday, I received a doc halo from one of the nurses on the 5th floor who said to me, I got a patient from the ED. I needed an oxygen flow meter. There was none in the room, but you had it in that room, and I was able to get it quickly. Thank you. So, there you go.
Hi, I'm Vince Conway. I'm one of the technicians in the Building Operations Center here at St. Joseph's. What we looked at was a lack of standard work relating to the handling of broken equipment, and that it had resulted in a broken process. Twice per day, biomed techs would travel the floors and units on a scavenger hunt looking for broken equipment. Techs searched behind doors and in every manner of nook and cranny trying to find these pieces of equipment. One observed trip lasted more than 40 minutes and resulted in no found equipment identified as broken. Just a waste of time and talent. One idea form identified a waste resulting from the rounding of the techs, and the idea for change was based in the need for standard work for floor staff and for those biomed techs. The new process identified a specific location as a repository for broken equipment. The resulting standardizing of the process is a very streamlined rounding process for the techs. Specific to the 5th floor, before our work, the tech was observed taking 2 minutes and 51 seconds during his rounding. After our process changes and establishment of standard work for the floor staff, the rounding time was reduced to just 15 seconds. That's 15 seconds, just 6% of the before time. You bring this kind of reduction to all their rounding would recover a vast amount of precious time that would be spent rightfully completing the repairs to get that equipment back to the floors. Eric.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erica Sauer, manager of the 5th floor, and I'm also the process owner for this RPIW. One of the other opportunities we identified was a way for managers to track and identify the status of their broken equipment. So we actually use a system that's already in play. It's aligned with our new ticket order, our tickets entry system, where it'll all be sent to the managers. But this is some standard work for managers to know about this process that already exists within the clinical engineering service tracking. So we're going to be getting that out to them. So just to wrap up, this team did an incredible amount of work in these 5 days, and we have really accomplished a lot of goals. And just to kind of high level them, we created a standard ticketing process. We did some great work having a consumables system for identifying those items. We created a designated charging and broken equipment area, along with a process for tagging, cleaning, and tracking broken equipment. We do have some follow-ups to do. There's still some construction going on in our unit right now, good construction. And we're going to continue to improve some of the visual triggers on the unit. Also, Nancy is going to work on getting all the managers in the ticketing system, because right now not every leader is in the ticketing system, but we'll get that addressed. That's it. Nope, I always forget the playbook. Additionally, we created this playbook. So as we move this process beyond the 5th floor to the other units, there's a playbook created with all of the standard work, so that it's kind of like a one package deal, so that anybody can take what we have put on the 5th floor and roll it out to their spaces as well.
So I have the best assignment of all, because I get to share with you our report card. So as Vince and Nancy spoke about, that staff walking for that biomed tech went from 262 steps down to 30. That's an 89% improvement. Lead time, we wanted to cut it in half. We're not quite at half, but we're under half. So we cut it down to 20 hours and 21 minutes, a 64% improvement. Standard work in process, because we improved our lead time drastically, 62. We only had a target of 85. So again, a 64% improvement. Quality defects, 24% improvement on the battery issue with the IV pumps and the Dynamaps. And then we added a second question off the nurse survey. The first one was the staff strongly agreeing that the ticket request system was user-friendly. And then we added the second one of, I know where to place equipment when it's broken. So a 56 and a 70% improvement respectively. Our productivity gain, because we were only concentrated on the 5th floor, it was a 9% improvement. But can you imagine as we spread that to 6 and 7 and ICU on the 3rd floor, how that's going to really impact that productivity? And then we reached our level 3 of the 5S. So this was a very gratifying exercise we did with the team this morning when we revisited our value stream and we took that red marker to it. Every place you see an X, the defect was eliminated or corrected. Those that have a half a line through it are a strong work in process that we will continue to champion until we get that second slash on it. Some of the items that are untouched have been placed on our parking lot, and we'll be working along with Tom, our executive sponsor, to get some of those addressed. So great work on getting rid of those bubbles. And here's our future state and where we are today with our process flow map. So the black lines mean that information is seamless now. It's not all that haphazard brokenness. There's no red thread at all. There's one piece of yellow, you can barely see it. It's from the patient to the nurse or the nursing staff because they may not even realize that a piece of equipment is out of service. So that's much improved.
We've done a lot of great work this week. We've learned a lot, we've educated ourselves, we've taken care of each other and our colleagues and our community. Some of the lessons that we are walking away with is that we can change. I think at the beginning of the week, one of the biggest fears is that we won't be able to change anything, and as you can clearly see, we can change. Other things that we learned is that we can trust the process. And that if, as Nancy said, if we keep the process simple, people will follow it. There's a lot of thank yous to be had, but before I do that, I want to recognize Lamont Milbourne, who was with us most of the week and did an incredible amount of work. He's a biomed tech in clinical engineering. He was unable to be with us today due to a family emergency, so I do want to thank him for his contributions. I want to thank our patients. I want to thank our home team. They were very welcoming and open and willing to try. We were up in their business Tuesday through Thursday, and they were willing to try out our suggestions, and they gave us feedback, and they just really dug in, and it's really appreciated. And then there's a whole, and the clinical engineering department as well. They were really engaging with us too. And then a whole slew of other people that you see here that jumped in and helped out. I'd like to recognize Alan Noel, back in the back, our Virginia Mason sensei, who's been with us all week coaching and facilitating and helping us through this process. So thank you very much. I'm going to give the team a round of applause. I'd like to ask Dr. Smythe if he would at this time come up and give some executive comments.
I would. Thank you very much. I would like to give some executive comments, and thank you for giving them a round of applause. It's certainly well deserved. This is the second time I've done this as far as giving executive comments, and there's clearly a pattern to this. So I'm going to have Ellen critique me after this to make sure that I'm moving forward in the way that we would want to with Virginia Mason. Because I think we've all learned that standardizing these processes is critical. So let me find my notes, because I took some notes throughout this presentation. The first question I have is, did Rose leave?
No, she's here.
Where's Rose? No, not Rose. I'm talking about Rose Sparrow. Did she step out? Okay. So I think one of the things that was fascinating about listening to the 90-day report out from the first RPIW was there was some regression, right? Which tells us this work is hard. It's not something that is you sort of implement it and suddenly it gets done and everything changes. We do tend to revert to our normal patterns. I think we all have that tendency. And so I was going to ask Rose what she kind of learned along the way as it related to that, but we can catch up about that another time. She also mentioned something about staff turnover. I didn't understand the workplace safety level going from 1 to 4. So I'm not sure who can answer that for me, but is 4 the highest, I guess?
5 is actually the highest.
5 is the highest, okay.
That's like unicorn level.
And that's measured by?
There's certain criteria that, yes, there's across that grid. If you have good visual controls, if you have a good plan of your sweeping the area on a regular basis, if there's a standard work agreement with the staff, there's certain levels that once you've achieved them, then you move up on them.
And is that a Toyota production system? production system, value delivery system terminology, that's not a joint commission terminology.
Correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that. And then I thought, Karen, for the sake of the audience, it would be helpful, because I don't know how many of us have heard about 5S or understand 5S. So if you could just take a minute to describe what, because we use this terminology and we use these acronyms, and it drives Senator Kelly as one example, a little crazy. So talk a little bit about 5S. It is a powerful tool.
It
And that's
is.
part of the reason I want you to explain it.
So, thanks for this putting on the spot. There are 5 S's, actually. The first S is to sort. That's the first step, and that's when you separate the needed from the not needed. You get rid of the unnecessary items in place. And these could be virtual things or not virtual things. It's your junk drawer. Things pile up. You don't need them anymore, but they stay there. The next step is to simplify. So you want to have everything in its place so that when you walk into a room, it's like if you go into your garage and you have a tool thing, it says the empty spot where the wrench is taped out is missing. I'm missing my wrench, and you know immediately. Simplify. Everything has a place and everything is in its place. The sweep is that actual visual sweep. I can walk into the storage room on the 7th floor and know if something is out of place or something is in place or is in the wrong place. Then you have the good visual controls in place. The fourth step in this is the standardization. And that's when you have those agreements in place. And that's like, so if outside a restroom, if you have a checklist, someone's coming by, everyone has agreed to, this is the way we keep it, and I'm gonna hold ourselves accountable to it. And then the 5th S is the self-discipline. And that's when we're actually doing that, and we're rounding, and we're maintaining those changes that we made, and it's sustaining.
Thank you, Karen. So I did this in my office just earlier this week. I had some downtime, and I sort of 5S'd my drawers, and I found stuff that I hadn't 5S'd my stuff in 18 months. You can 5S your closets at home. You can 5S a lot of different things. So it is a phenomenal technique, and I strongly recommend that you guys think about it in your downtime, because I think there's a lot of value there. I want to ask the audience, I'm going to ask a couple of you to volunteer what you were feeling or thinking or what was popping up when you began to see the current state.
You mean the original current?
The original stuff. What sense did you have when you saw that picture of all of that equipment sort of piled into an area? Does it strike you how we allow this current environment to exist? It's fascinating to me, and we have to think through that. And I think one of the many great things that we saw from the team today was your ability to show us that. And your ability to look at it and say, well, we can do something about this and we can make a difference here. So, any comments from the audience to the team about things they saw or anything that struck them in particular?
I think just how responsive you were to, you saw something and you tried something and you made it happen. It sounds like you had the support to make things happen, and that was very impressive.
Scott?
I was staggered that the prior process involved clinical engineering, treasure hunting for pieces of tagged equipment.
Right.
It just made no sense whatsoever, and yet that's just how we've done it for how many years? So someone's been doing that treasure hunt here for years and years, just looking for broken equipment.
Right.
How many other of those kinds of processes do we have that when put to light we'd say, gosh, that makes no sense at all, does it?
Exactly. Well said. Paul, is there anything in particular that struck you and you were watching this? Because that certainly struck me, and I think there were many other things. Anything that you sort of picked up that you liked?
With the first one, I was particularly impressed with the zero hangups. How many of us, when we're trying to get a hold of our physician's office, get put on hold and it feels like we've been forgotten? And just really, that team ought to be applauded for that. That's really awesome that it went to zero.
Yeah, and it stayed there.
So that's really fantastic for our patients and for everybody. I think it's true. We to pick up on what Scott was saying, we have kind of our own behaviors all around us, the results of our own behaviors all around us, and we get used to them, and they create waste in every single day, and that waste creates stress in our lives that we're trying to get work done and we can't get it done because you know, whether I can't find the item in the desk drawer because I haven't 5S my office either.
Exactly.
In 5 years instead of 18 months. Or I'm a clinician and I can't find, you know, an IV machine that works or what have you. And all that creates stress that, you know, makes it harder to work here, it takes harder to take great care of our patients. And it also creates cost. And so how do we harvest that cost?
Thank you. Any other, Mary?
So I was really impressed with, without any training or an email blast, and just having those visual cues where the broken equipment's supposed to go, and that you're supposed to put a, you know, the printout of your ticket on it was done without anybody even being told to do it. So that I felt was really impressive.
Cal? Any other? Oh, please.
I was impressed with the improvement in the printer issue, because it's something I think a lot of us in office areas live every day. And that equates over to the cost question, because we walk a lot to get to that one printer that is in the one office space. And mainly, it's not a clinical area, but I can tell you, it's the only exercise I get.
But that's not the idea, right? No, that's a great point.
They didn't have to buy one, as far as I understood, they just had to move it.
Right.
And so they probably had a net zero cost effect on there, but lots of times these projects can increase costs. But I'm not sure how you balance that out or come up with solutions if you don't have the money.
Right. What's that, Cal?
I was impressed with the clinical engineering broken equipment portion where it didn't take 10 meetings to come to a solution. Everything was able to be accomplished in 1 week, and that is amazing. There was no follow-up, that everyone was just hands-on and got it.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And
Yes, I just wanted to, I have two things that I want to say thank you for. First, to the executive team for allowing the resources to be able to do this type of work. I think it's incredibly important to be able to hear from the front line and to really get their feedback about what they need to care for the patients. I know there's a cost behind having a whole week, people out of staffing and different focus, but the end result, as we can see, is so extremely valuable.
thank you for saying that.
And then the second thing, I just would like to have Jeanette Wiesner stand up for just one more recognition. As a manager, I can't tell you how so absolutely proud I am of you and your ability to be involved in this work and to be able to present in such a wonderful way today. And it just makes me feel like a proud mom.
It was a group effort, teamwork, everybody, you
Wasn't it
know,
though? Yeah.
work
which is what's the-
together,
which is
and we
the-
can take some constructive criticism too to make it work. I just want to add one more note. Erica's unit, I did a sweep this morning, a walkthrough, early in the morning, so night shift was still there. And today, right before we went to lunch, there weren't no equipment in the hallway, so they passed the.
Fell in the rooms, no.
It's
really exciting. It's because there's space, it's because there's space for it. There was
Right.
tremendous
And
amount
now-
of construction.
And we're still in work in progress at the clutter of the
Right.
site, so they're making progress. I think they should have a hand too, because they're, for nurses and techs and secretaries.
I have one final technical question and then a final comment. The technical question was, where were the consumables before?
They were.
So the problem is that consumables come from a lot of different vendors. Some
Right.
come from HEM, some come from other spaces, and we really don't always have a good handle on that. And a lot of them come from, God bless Nancy, ordering them for us. But we did not have any good process for that. Most of the time, I'm like, what do we need? Flow meters? How do I get those? And like when I had to get flow meters, I called like 3 people because nobody knew. So there's definitely a lot of challenges in consumables.
Every one of
Okay,
those times one of those consumables was needed, that piece of equipment went down to clinical engineering for however long until it was
Got it,
fixed and then came back.
No, it was very clear. That was this fascinating. I was like, where were they before? Okay, great. So I know we're coming up on an hour, so I want to close this out with some final comments. I went up early today around 7:15 to 7:30 to CTR2 to take a look at the work that had been done and see if anybody was there, and Karen and Michelle were there. And I had a chance to look around the room and see some of the posters that were still up. The poster that struck me the most was the one that is split into two, and on the left half it says fears, and on the other right half it says expectations. And it brought me back, when I read the fears and the expectations that you all had, to late January 2017, when the executive team visited Seattle. And on that very first day, in that very first hour, that's exactly what we had to do. We had to take Post-its out, and we had to put our biggest fear and our biggest expectation on this on either side, just like you guys did today. And what struck me was how similar the fears were and how similar the expectations were. Our fears were that we would come back to Baltimore and we wouldn't be able to get this work done. Our fear was that we wouldn't be able to get you to believe in this process and in this standardization and in this journey. Our fear was that we would not be willing to invest in this. We had so many fears, and they were all concerning. We had expectations. Wouldn't it be just phenomenal if it actually worked? You know, wouldn't it be amazing if we actually were able to make the transformation? And so what I want to tell you, this team, and I want to tell the audience, is that I stand here humbled, incredibly humbled. I get emotional thinking about the fact that not even 18 months later, where we are. I was up with the quality committee looking at a dashboard. I see them in pediatrics. I see what they did with the 5S on vascular access. And there are now countless examples of the work that frontline staff are doing in taking control of your lives, your professions, your jobs, and you're bringing change to this organization. So I'm humbled. I'm humbled by your willingness to accept this change and to embrace this change and to make it a part of your lives. For me, it's just something that every day is something that I'll remember this one, I remember RPIW. I just am so thankful and grateful to you all, and I'm very, very appreciative of the amazing work you did this weekend. Tom, I really appreciate you being willing to verbalize your sense of conversion. I think part of this journey for all of us is to be transparent. And your willingness to be so transparent about your misgivings or unsureness or whatever it was way back in January of 17, and to now feel that sense and to be willing to be transparent about that sense is very powerful. So thank you all, phenomenal work.